Hello guys, and I just love it. This is huge. You know, it has become a new Russian tradition to pretend that everything is fine every time they fail, but today it will literally be impossible because the whole world observed online how the Kremlin, despite all the efforts, lost two of its sanctioned vessels. This happened in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean and simultaneously in the Caribbean. And the Kremlin did everything to protect these vessels. They actually sent a number of warships and even a submarine to follow Bella 1, hoping that the tanker will manage to escape to the waters close to Russia, but failed. Honestly, I'm a realist, and until the very last minute, I did not believe that the UK and US crews will board on Bella 1, but they did. They seized the vessel and arrested the crew. And the Kremlin has no comments, but millions of Russians, including their top military vloggers, have a lot of comments. They are super worried that this weakness of the Kremlin was exposed. They are also worried about the things that might have potentially be on board of these vessels and that they can quarrel Putin and Trump. And honestly, what we hear inside Ukraine, that the stance between the White House, the Kremlin, and the Ukraine changed tremendously during these days. So let's discuss what happened to two of Russia's sanctioned vessels and why it is super important for the restoration of the international law and the defeat of Russia, because that's the only working peace plan. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see Putin in The Hague, subscribe and share these videos to spread the good news. So let's begin with this extremely important fact. Finally, two of Russia's illegal sanctioned vessels were arrested. It happened simultaneously in two very different parts of the world, in the Atlantic Ocean and in the Caribbean. And we had the pleasure to observe the whole process literally online. And I can tell you that a lot of my countrymen and also ex-YouTube commentators did not believe that the seizure will actually take place, but it did, and this is beautiful, important, and this is how the justice works. So Russia did everything to protect that first tanker, Bella 1. It was experiencing some problems next to the shores of Venezuela, and it was registered as a Guyana vessel, but we all know that is the trick that Iran, Venezuela, Russia used to avoid sanctions. That's a huge problem for the international law, for the implementation of sanctions. And when they experienced that problems, they decided to switch to re-register the vessel, put the Russian flag on it, and change the name. And Putin perhaps believed that this fake image of Russia as a superpower would work with the US, with the UK, and his dream failed. And it also demonstrates that nobody takes Russia seriously. This flag did not save the situation, and I'm sure similar cases will repeat with more and more sanctioned vessels around the world. And here I hope that people from the Baltic countries also watch us. There are a lot of illegal Russian ships in your waters. That might be a very good example on how to act. So when it became quite dangerous for Russia, they decided to send their warships. They decided to send a submarine to follow that vessel and protect it until it reaches the waters of Russia. And it didn't work out because Russia is a paper tiger. I hope that more and more decision makers, military experts will finally come to understanding that Russia is all fake. They describe themselves as the second strongest army in the world, but turn out to be the second strongest army in Russia after Ukrainian troops entered Belgorod and Kursk. And there are a number of very big myths that were destroyed by Ukrainian drones, by Ukrainian intelligence, and those who observe the course of this war that already lasts, just as the Second World War for Russia, know that every time, every day, Russia becomes weaker and poorer. So what happened when the US and UK crews landed on that vessel to arrest it, to seize the vessel, to seize the crew? Nothing. That warships, that submarine simply observed from distance, because it's a little bit different, than shelling Ukrainian kindergartens. Russia is only strong with way smaller countries, with way smaller armies, but their attack on Ukraine, their invasion of my country, was the greatest mistake that Putin's regime made. They underestimated us and overestimated themselves. And I believe that these 4 years of war, inability to get what they want, and the fact that they've lost 1 million of soldiers to get 1% of the Ukrainian territory, finally persuaded the UK, the US, that Russia is bluffing, that Russia is a classical bully. So Bella 1 was a sanctioned vessel. Russia wanted to save it. Russia even gave their flag to that vessel, hoping that would act as a deterrent, but they failed. It was empty. And it was sanctioned back in times of Biden. And there was a decision of the US court that it can be arrested. And finally, this decision was implemented. What is interesting that many people believe something unusual might have been on board of that ship. It was empty, did not have any oil on it, because usually they use such tankers for the transportation of sanctioned oil. But many say it may have some kind of weapons, including missiles coming from Russia to Venezuela, but they were late. Maybe they wanted to add some arguments to Maduro's regime, but they did not manage to come in time. And it's just rumors, but people believe that potentially Trump might have found out about this and, of course, feel a little bit disappointed with Putin. It would be interesting to know your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. But what is very important, that this vessel with the Russian flag on it, with a number of Russian warships and a submarine following it, was seized. And the Kremlin did nothing because, well, they know if they cannot win Ukraine, they of course cannot fight with NATO. They don't have money, they don't have power, they don't have weapons to fight with the United States or the UK. They simply observe it. And this may change the relations between Russia and the US, but actually return them to the good old normal, because once again, the Kremlin doctrine is always anti-American, and to try and reboot these relations is a constant mistake that a number of the US administrations were making. Ukraine is your ally, Europe is your ally, and Russia is a friend of China. And not a friend, a vassal, a serf, something like that. And another vessel was arrested in the Caribbean, Sophie. And honestly, this is what should have happened like 4 years ago, if not in 2014 after Russia annexed Crimea. That is how you need to act after sanctions are implemented. And all combined with the sanctioned Rosneft, Lukoil that report greatest losses ever and were once successful Russian companies, that is the proof that Russia is the poorest ever. Russia is the weakest ever. And now is the time to unite and defeat this evil that invested a lot in problems and a lot of bad things in my country, but also in your countries, in the European Union, in the United States. And, now it's super interesting to watch how the Kremlin has nothing to say. The so-called Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lavrov, simply begs for the Russian crew to be returned home as soon as possible. But I hope they will visit the United States and will be prosecuted there according to the law. Maybe they do have some interesting information that can weaken the Kremlin regime and change the course of this war. Let me know, what do you think about this beautiful and extremely important day for the restoration of the international law. And hopefully, many more illegal, dangerous vessels will also be arrested, and those who send them to our oceans will be held accountable. Please share to spread the truth, subscribe to my Anna Danilchuk channel, where we have longer weekly discussions on some important topic that relates to the Russian war in Ukraine. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord. The links in the description of this video, same as the link to the merch shop. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels, but most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!